What is going on, everyone? This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And here in today's episode, we went and asked a bunch of questions to our Twitter audience. By the way, if you want to follow us on Twitter, we will have the links in the description below. So go ahead, check us out, and follow us on Twitter to get up to date with all the Clutch Crew Sports information. But we'll be reviewing some polls that we posted, and we'll also be talking about some all-star snubs. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Now let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What is going on, guys? This is Eric, your ranting co-host here, and I'm excited to be back for another episode. I'm going to be curious to see if any of us, if we agree with Twitter, if we don't agree with Twitter. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out, so I hope you guys enjoy it.
What's going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most, and for the second week in a row, I'm going to be interested to see how often Zach and I agree or disagree on stuff. Definitely a lot more chances this time around since there's going to be 4 options and not just 2, but I'm very excited to get into it and also talk about the NBA All-Star Game.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Nate here. One of my polls I posted didn't go quite the way I was hoping to. We'll get on that a little bit more in a little bit, but it should be fun talking about all the different topics tonight. I think there's some good debates here.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ask Twitter. This is the theme of this episode. We did it. We did one of these back in the summer, but we're doing another one here with the whole crew. So, all in all, we have a total of 8 questions. Each of us asked 2 questions on our own, and we got various results. And these questions were all really interesting as well, so I hope you enjoy them. And I will start out with my first question, and then all 4 of us as a panel are going to make our picks on what we would have voted for, and then we'll go over the Twitter results, and we'll see how different we are from Twitter, and then make the cases in our opinion. So I'll start out with the first one here, guys. My first question was, which of these teams is under the most pressure to make the playoffs next season? And my 4 choices were 2 AFC, 2 NFC teams. I said the Raiders, Patriots, Cowboys, and 49ers. So my pick for this poll, if I voted, was for the Raiders. Eric, what about you?
Mine was the Cowboys.
Mine was the 49ers.
Nate?
I went with the Cowboys.
Okay, so we had between the 4 of us 2 votes for the Cowboys. Yeah, we'll just go Zach, Eric, Connor, Nate in that order in the future. So Twitter results were 61% for the Cowboys in first place, 16% for the Patriots in second place, 49ers in third place with 13%, and then the Raiders in last with 10%. And the poll did get 31 votes total. So the reason I said the Raiders, which actually ended up being last place in this poll, was because the Raiders, to me, are under the most pressure simply because they're in a brand new market. They're in their second year in Las Vegas. It's pressure whenever you move your team to a new city. You create a new group of fans. It's important to win and win early in your franchise's existence in that city, so you develop a fan base. And if the Raiders don't win, then I feel like they're going to be missing out on a potential. All these other teams have established fan bases already, so for that aspect, I think they're under a lot of pressure. Also, too, compared to these other 3 teams, they really haven't made the playoffs much recently at all. I think 4 years ago they made the playoffs and lost. So it's been a long, long time since they won a playoff game. I think going all the way back to before the Super Bowl even that they were in. So that just tells you how long the Raiders have been without playoff success. And not to mention they play in the division with Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes. So the future is going to be tough for the Raiders to make the playoffs. I feel like this next season, it's huge for both Derek Carr and John Gruden. I know Gruden's got the 10-year contract, but still, he's going to be looked at in a legacy term. If he can't win in Vegas, it's going to look bad on his resume. and Derek Carr is going to be fighting for his job if he doesn't make the playoffs. So I think there's a lot of things going on in Oakland. If they don't win, a lot of things are going to be blown up. And that fan base, like I said, is so new in Vegas. But Connor, I'll hear from you since you also picked another unpopular answer, the 49ers. say real quickly why you think the 49ers are under the most pressure.
Well, I guess mine's probably honestly the opposite of yours in a way, because you said that you feel like the Raiders have pressure because they haven't had playoff success in a long time. I think it's mainly for me the fact that the 49ers, they made the Super Bowl they made the Super Bowl a season ago and they lost, a very close game against the Chiefs. They had a chance to win that game. And, this season, expectations were obviously high this season, I don't know if there was too many people that picked them to win the division. I'm sure there was a good amount, and there was a good amount that probably picked them to go back to the NFC title game. But, they had the excuse this year. They had the excuse of the injuries. Pretty well everyone was hurt at some point. A couple guys were done for the season. So next year with a full healthy squad, it's a lot of pressure on Kyle Shanahan and a lot of pressure on this 49ers squad to prove that Super Bowl run wasn't a fluke. I'm not saying they have to go back to the Super Bowl or anything, but they at least need to make it back to the playoffs. It is going to be tough. They play in a tough division, but the NFC as a whole is weak right now. So even though their division might be tough, they should be able to at least get a wild card spot given the situation the NFC is in right now.
Yeah, and I will say that would have been my second place pick. I was deciding between the Raiders and 49ers, but that'll end that poll. And I'll let Eric go ahead and bring up his first poll.
Yeah, so I brought a couple of, I brought a couple NBA questions to the table. And so we're getting pretty close to the All-Star break, so you can kind of start to tell which teams are separating themselves from the pack and which teams are falling behind. So I wanted to ask, which NBA team has been the biggest disappointment so far? And my choices were the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics from the Eastern Conference, and the New Orleans Pelicans and the Dallas Mavericks from the Western Conference. And I chose the Boston Celtics. Zach, who did you go with?
I went with the Dallas Mavericks. What about you, Connor?
I also went with the Dallas Mavericks.
And Nate, how about you?
I replied on Twitter, but I went with the Celtics.
I saw your comment. You were like, I'm pretty disappointed with my squad this year.
Yes, as Nate's team, I can see why obviously Nate would pick them. Zach and Connor went with the Mavericks. And the Mavericks would have been my second choice. But the reason why I chose the Celtics, first of all, with the Mavericks, they didn't have Porzingis for a big stretch early on in the season. So while I feel like the Mavericks do have high expectations overall this season, I'm still willing to give them a little bit more time. But I feel like for Boston, with the amount of talent they have and with them being in the weaker conference, I don't really understand why they're at where they're at right now. I feel like they should be doing much better, and I know I could see why some people would pick the Heat too, since they were in the finals last year and everything, but I just personally haven't fully been sold on the Heat. I felt like they overachieved last year, so while I feel like the Heat should be doing a little bit better than they are, I'm not as disappointed in them. But Boston was a team that I had really high expectations for, and unfortunately, they've just fallen flat, and they haven't had, as big of issues as the Mavericks have. So with the injuries and everything, they've had a little bit, but I feel like Jaylen Brown's been inconsistent, and like he'll have a great game, but then a bad game. Tatum will have a good game and then a bad game. Kemba Walker has disappeared at times this season. So I feel like
milk carton.
Yeah, Kemba, are you going to be the new Kyle Lowry? Especially with that money he's getting paid. But anyway, so that's my reasoning for picking the Celtics as the most disappointing. Connor and Zach, you both picked the Mavericks, so whichever one of you feels more strongly on them, I'll let you talk about why you picked the Mavericks.
I guess I'll talk.
Yeah,
about
I'm
the
okay
Mavericks.
with that.
Yeah. And by the way, hold on, Eric. I don't think you said actually the Twitter
Oh,
results.
the results. Sorry. Yeah, I actually honestly can't see it all on my screen.
Oh, okay.
Our
I'll
logos
read the
aren't really.
results then.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So okay. So the Celtics won the poll with 40%, and then the Heat and Mavericks came in. They actually tied for second with 27%, and then the Pelicans in last with 7%, and it had 30 votes on it. So it was kind of all over the place, really. But the Celtics did end up winning. But my reason for saying the Mavericks and why I voted the Mavericks was because they were a team last year that, a lot of people argued played a really competitive playoff series against the LA Clippers. So a lot of people were thinking, okay, this team has real deep playoff aspirations. And they also have Luka Doncic, who a lot of people had as at the start of the season as the front runner for the MVP. I know that's who I picked for winning the MVP at the start of the season. So between having the predicted MVP on your team and the success that they had last year, the fact that they're basically like 500 right now, I think they're the most disappointed in my eyes just because of that MVP factor with Luka.
All right, so that will do it for my poll, and we will move on to Connor's first poll now.
Yes. So back to the NFL here with this first poll. So I decided to talk about, obviously, one of the big stories, a couple weeks ago was that Matthew Stafford was getting traded to the Rams for Jared Goff and a couple draft picks. So, beforehand we were talking about who could be potential contenders or potential teams in the NFC to take down the Buccaneers. Well, there's been a lot of talk that Matthew Stafford going to the Rams puts them in prime position to take down the Buccaneers and get to the Super Bowl. So I made a poll about how far will Matthew Stafford take the Los Angeles Rams this year. Obviously, they still have the number one defense, and they got some weapons on offense. So I just went pretty standard here. I didn't put win Super Bowl as an option. I just put getting to the Super Bowl. So we have wild card round, divisional round, NFC title game, and Super Bowl. So I said that he would take them to the NFC title game. Zach, what about you?
I voted divisional round. Eric, how about you? Eric?
Oh, sorry, I forgot. My bad. I forgot I was muted. I voted NFC title game. And then Nate, what did you pick?
I voted divisional round.
All right, so split 2-2 on the podcast. This was a pretty close poll overall on Twitter. So about 29% said wild card round. The minority 14% said the divisional round. 33% said the NFC title game, and 24% said the Super Bowl. So I think the NFC title game is probably a realistic expectation for the Los Angeles Rams. Like I said, obviously they still have the number one defense. I think whether they can move past that or not is really going to depend on some of the offseason moves that they make. It's really just going to be about can they get more weapons for Matthew Stafford, because obviously they have Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, who are both really good receivers, but they're really lacking at the tight end position, and they've got a running back by committee with a couple kind of average running backs. So I think, they still have a good offensive line too. So I think the biggest thing for them would be right now to either go out and get a running back or possibly draft a running back, or maybe go out and find a big time tight end. Because, if you have a really stellar passing game, then you don't need a fantastic run game. Their run game was serviceable this season. So basically just keep the defense intact, get the offense in a little bit of a better spot. But it's also mainly because the NFC, I mentioned this before on the previous poll, that the NFC is really weak right now. Really the only teams besides the Buccaneers that are looking like they could contend for the NFC title game would be the Rams, the 49ers, and then and the Packers would be the only three teams besides the Bucs that could probably get there, in my opinion, at the moment. Maybe some good offseason moves would, maybe put the Saints or the Seahawks in that conversation. But as of right now, there's only four teams, in my opinion. Three teams besides the Bucs. So, and then I think the Rams, they did a really good job last season in the playoffs, especially given the fact the issues that they had at quarterback. Now you're bringing in a proven, solid quarterback who, an all-pro quarterback, which honestly was very underrated in Detroit. There was actually an argument war that is still ongoing on this poll on Twitter between two people. One of them was I guess he's a Stafford fan because his profile pic is Stafford. I don't know if he was a previous Lions fan or Rams fan or what, but he's clearly a Stafford fan.
He had Michigan State in his bio, so I'm guessing he was a Lions fan.
Yeah, so he's probably a Lions fan, but also a Stafford fan. So, and then the other guy, I guess, the other guy started it. He said something like, "Oh, well, he took Detroit so far." So then the other guy started to go back and forth. But I was more on the side of that. I think he was really always a really good quarterback on a terrible team. I mean, yeah, he had Calvin Johnson, which was the main argument that the other guy was trying to make, that, oh, well, he had Calvin Johnson. Why didn't he go far? Well, yeah, he had Calvin Johnson, but the rest of the time he was there, the Lions also had a terrible offensive line, no run game, and no defense. So, in my opinion, one Hall of Fame wide receiver does not lead you to success. You need all the other, at least a defense, to also go along with it. So, I think he was very underrated in Detroit. I think this will be good for him. But I'll let Nate quickly say why he thinks that they'll get knocked out in the divisional round.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely think that they're one of the main contenders in the NFC. I won't be surprised if they made it to the title game and even possibly to the Super Bowl. But I just think that it's a tricky conference at the time being. And I just think that kind of like what you touched on. I think Stafford's a great upgrade at quarterback. I think I'm a big fan of his, but I think as far as weapons go, they definitely need to add something to that group. Kupp and Woods are great, but they've been hurt off and on. I think one more big addition, I could definitely see them going, being the favorites after the Bucks in that conference. But right now, I never had a whole lot of trust in the Rams personally, though. So I'm kind of not 100% sold on them as the favorites just yet.
Yep. And then let's go ahead and have Nate bring up his first poll. And this will be the discussion will be a little bit different from the poll, but Nate, go ahead and say what the poll was, and then we'll kind of talk about the reality of it.
Yeah, so I had a kind of a fun idea for a poll, but it got blown up with the news this morning. The original question was, which team would benefit most from signing J.J. Watt? Obviously, which team thinks they stand the most to benefit, because the Cardinals signed him this morning to a 2-year, $31 million deal. I'll run down just really quickly what you guys thought on Twitter. The Packers, the votes were Steelers, Packers, Browns, and Bills. And Packers and Bills tied each with 31%, so that was the winning vote. Obviously, all those options were wrong. So instead of talking about that, we're going to talk about just a little bit how we think he's going to fit in with the Cardinals, and if that's a good move or not for both the team and for JJ. So yeah, I guess I'll just ask, I'll kind of do a replacement question for everyone here. What do you trying to see how to phrase this? Do you guys think this is a good move do you guys think this is the right choice for JJ Watt at this point in his career? So I'll let Zach go first.
Yeah, when the news broke about this, I'll honestly say I didn't think he was going to go to one of these teams listed on the poll. I thought he was clearly pranking everybody with all the stuff he was saying before. Like I easily saw that he was just messing around and had no real intention of going to any of those teams that they were rumored to. You could tell he was just laughing it up. But as far as the actual event with him with the Cardinals, I do think this is huge because they're in a tough division in the NFC West, but this makes their D-line scary. I mean, him and Chandler Jones off the edge are one of the best duos. I think this is really a big addition to the Cardinals. Also, to his leadership, too, is really going to help them out. This might be what puts them over the edge and makes them a playoff team, in addition to Kyler's growth. So I was a huge fan of this. I think it's an under-the-radar move, and I think it was also smart on his part because he got a favorable contract, too. This is the last time he'll get paid big money. So he took advantage of that, which I have no problem with anybody ever taking advantage of that and getting the most money they can. So I thought it was good for him, and I think he's going to a pretty good team as well. And for all these people saying ring chasing, only one team gets a ring. In the NFL, there's no dynasties that really, win the Super Bowl 4 straight years. So he was never going to go to a team and they would instantly become automatic Super Bowl champions. That's a pipe dream. People can ring chase all they want, but the odds are still really slim. I'll let Eric say if he agrees with me or not before we move on.
Yeah, I agree with it. I actually do like it. I wasn't expecting it. Like, I voted the Packers on the thing because I felt like returning to Wisconsin would have been cool for him. And Green Bay's always had a problem with their, D-line, with their run defense and pass rush and stuff over the last few years. That's been their biggest weakness besides maybe weapons in the passing game. So I thought Green Bay would have been a really good fit, but then when I thought about it after he went to Arizona, I really like it. He becomes an instant leader on that defense, and he also reunites with DeAndre Hopkins, which I think is pretty cool. So it's nice to see, as a Jags fan, to see the two of the three Texans' best players not only out of Houston but out of the division and out of the conference. Because I don't know why, I just had this bad gut feeling in my heart. Yeah, I had this bad gut feeling brewing up that he was going to go to the Titans or something, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
no.
same.
So when I found out he was going to Arizona today, when Zach and Connor mentioned in the group chat, I was like, sweet, let's go. So, but even aside from my rooting interest, though, I do think Arizona is going to be a really good fit for him, and I'll be excited to see what he does there, because I've always liked the guy. Just hated the team he played for, but
yeah,
now I can root for him since he's not in my division anymore. So I'm curious to see what he does, and I'm excited for him.
Yeah, definitely.
It's gonna be real interesting to see what happens in the NFC West next season, man. Like, all four of those teams have a potential to do something.
Yeah, you better have good offensive lines too. I'll say that.
Seattle.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring up my second Twitter poll question for you guys. So my question was, talking about the draft here. This is a draft question. What team needs to draft a first-round quarterback the most? And so I didn't go with the obvious ones like Jaguars, Jets. I said Steelers, Patriots, Falcons, and Panthers. And my vote for this poll would have been Panthers. What about you, Eric?
I also voted Panthers. What about you, Connor?
I voted for the Patriots. What about Nate?
And I actually voted for the Steelers, but I was torn between two with this one.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a Steelers fan voting for the Patriots and the Patriots fan voting for the Steelers. Is that correct?
I did not expect
I
that
mean,
at
honestly, is it saying something about the other person's team, like, that they suck more, that they need to draft a quarterback or something?
I don't know. But I'll go ahead. That's funny. I'll go ahead and say the Twitter results. So Patriots won the Twitter poll there's 22 votes here. Patriots got 64%. Panthers were in second with 23%. Steelers were in third with 9%, and then the Falcons with 5% last. My reasoning for the Panthers is because so if you look at the division they're in with the NFC South, we don't know what's going to happen with the Saints and the Falcons. It seems
Spoiler alert for later.
Yeah. The Falcons seem like Matt Ryan will be there for one more season at least, and maybe another season. But the Panthers really have an opportunity here with the draft. They have the 8th overall pick. They have an opportunity to trade up and get a first-round quarterback and just have a young rookie quarterback to potentially rule the division for the next 5 years after Brady retires. And we'll see what happens with the other teams, but they'll be set up for long-term success in that division. And as far as the other teams, the reasons why I didn't say them, you can make the argument the Falcons. While I do think the Falcons really should draft a quarterback, you could say, let's go for the last chance for Matt Ryan's career. Obviously, he's been to a Super Bowl before. For the Patriots, I honestly think Belichick and the Patriots, they're either going to sign a veteran quarterback or draft one later in the draft. I don't see them as a first-round quarterback team. And then for the Steelers, kind of the same thing. Although they probably do need one to replace Ben next season. They could do that next season. He's for sure the starter, I think, now for 2021. So the Steelers have their for sure quarterback for 2021. The Falcons have a very good quarterback situation for Matt Ryan in 2021. The Patriots, I just think the Patriots have many more options than the Panthers do. The Panthers should get their guy at 8 or trade up and end up with one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in this draft. The other teams, to me, if they do draft one in the first round, aren't going to be as good as that Panthers quarterback would be. But I'll ask Connor to find out why he said the Patriots, and which also won the Twitter vote with 64%.
Yeah, I think for me, it's basically mostly just out of necessity for right now because, like, obviously you said with the Falcons, like, they have the best quarterback situation out of these teams right now. Like, Matt Ryan's still really good. Again, he just plays on a bad team, kind of like Matthew Stafford with the Lions. So they definitely have Matt Ryan for the future. And then for the Steelers, like I said, Roethlisberger is the starter right now. But I think Mason Rudolph, I think Mason Rudolph could be the starter after Roethlisberger retires. I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting to that Cleveland Browns game, but he looked really good in that game. Like, he was throwing dimes on the deep ball. He was looking good. So obviously there's a difference between one game and keeping up for a full season, which, we saw with Nick Foles with the Eagles a couple seasons ago. So, and then for the Panthers, I think it's mainly, first of all, I think that they really could use that number 8 pick and some more of their assets to trade for a better quarterback rather than taking a chance on a first round pick, because you never know if these first round picks are going to work out. They could be great, they could be busts, who knows? And then, if it's a bust, then they're going to be right back where they were before. So, and they, at least for the time being, have Teddy Bridgewater for this upcoming season. So they do have a quarterback for next year in case they don't do anything. But I do think, obviously the Texans have been all, oh, we're not going to trade Deshaun Watson, blah, 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 blah. They should still try and trade for Deshaun Watson. Or maybe just try and trade for someone else. Or, maybe they could try and make a trade for Dak Prescott. Who knows? They could try something. They have more options. Whereas the Patriots, I feel like they're just out of options, honestly. Like, Jarrett Stidham's not the guy. He already proved that last season. They're letting Cam Newton walk. I mean, I just see absolutely no other options for the Patriots at this point. They seem like they're dead in the water when it comes to the quarterback situation at the moment. And also, like Zach said, they don't exactly have the greatest position in the draft to draft a quarterback. So we'll see. Who knows? But I think that's their only option. I think they could get someone like Mac Jones maybe with their pick, but there's no telling what happens on draft night.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's go ahead and I'll let Eric talk about his second question here, another NBA question. And Eric, if you need me to read the results after we all vote, I can do that too.
Well, this one's a lot easier.
That's true.
Even though I can't fully see him, I can pretty much tell.
Yeah.
So this one is, if the season ended today, who would be the MVP? And so the choices were Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, or Steph Curry. Now, this one didn't get as many votes as some of the others, but Joel Embiid got the most votes easily. It looks like 71%. And then LeBron got the rest of the votes, and Jokic and Steph didn't get any. But my vote is Joel Embiid. What about you, Zach?
I voted LeBron. How about you, Connor?
I voted Joel Embiid.
And Nate?
And I voted. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I voted Embiid as well.
Yeah. So for me, Embiid has just been the most dominant player so far this season. And as much as I can't stand LeBron, I did consider giving him my vote. But what's been really telling for me about LeBron is in a lot of these games that they've been playing since AD got hurt, they haven't looked good in a lot of them. Now, they did turn around and kill the Warriors just recently, so that was a nice bounce back performance for them. But they lost like 5 out of 6 games. One of them was to the Wizards, who have been really bad. And and they also lost to the Jazz, who have been a really good team, but they got blown out by the Jazz. So, like, to me, you can tell that the Lakers obviously miss AD, and I think AD is a bigger reason why the Lakers win than LeBron. So I don't really feel like LeBron is earning it. I feel like a lot of his stats are more of his like hollow stats that he usually
Triple
gets. Like,
doubles, man. Triple
yeah,
doubles.
I almost did it. I was like, I'm not going to do it, but Connor did it for me, so that's cool. So, yeah, everybody. If you've ever listened to any episodes of this podcast, you know that I hate triple doubles, and I think they're overrated because I felt like if triple doubles really truly led to anything, then the Thunder would have multiple championships because of Russell Westbrook, but we don't have any. So triple doubles are very overrated. So I don't look at triple doubles as the reason why a player should get MVP. Unfortunately, the sports media does. But when I've watched a few 76ers games, and when I've watched Joel Embiid play, he is playing on a different level this year that he has not had in multiple seasons in the past. He's stayed healthy for the most part. He's missed a game here or there, but when this guy plays, he has been, I don't want to say unstoppable, but he has been like almost unstoppable. He's the reason why the 76ers are the number one seed in the East right now. He's the reason why they have the best record. Whereas like with LeBron and the Lakers, I think it's more so because of AD, and you can tell now that LeBron hasn't been, I mean, since AD hasn't been playing, that the Lakers have been slipping. Whereas if LeBron was really the MVP, I think the Lakers could have at least won a few of those games and stayed at an elite level. Whereas you can tell the Lakers are not elite when AD is down. So for that reason, I'm picking Embiid. But Zach, you were well, I guess I want to say this too. I don't know about you guys, but I do feel like this season, in terms of the MVP level, I do feel like it's been a little underwhelming this year. I haven't been as excited this season with how the top players have been playing. I haven't enjoyed it as much, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. That's a whole nother topic there. But anyway, so Zach, you picked LeBron though. So give us your reasoning for picking LeBron.
All right, yeah. So I picked LeBron, and I was going back and forth on this one. It's really close. I think most people would say it's close between the two, but you brought up a lot of the bad losses for LeBron, but also too, like, to me it evens out because Embiid has lost to the Cavaliers a couple of times. I mean, their records are about the same, and I watched that one game against the Trailblazers with nobody on the Trailblazers that they lost. So the bad losses to me are starting to even out a little bit if you look at the totality of it. And then the big difference maker to me, and I know your poll was phrased today, and I did factor that in, but even going for the long term, the reason I picked LeBron over Embiid is because LeBron's played in every single game this season, and his minutes are very high as well. Whereas Embiid has already missed 6 games this season and likely will miss another 6 for the rest of the year. So, but for right now, to me, the time difference, just Embiid hasn't been in the lineup as much as LeBron has been in the lineup. I mean, he's been the only consistent force for the Lakers. They've had Schroeder and AD hurt. So for that reason is why I picked LeBron.
All right, I got you. Yeah, I can respect it. I think that's partially too. That's why I felt like this has been a kind of a more underwhelming thing, is because of all these players taking load management and rest days now. So it makes it harder to, pick somebody when that's
COVID and that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we're also just so tired of it always being LeBron in the conversation. Maybe once LeBron retires, it'll heat up again because it'll be we can talk about 5 or 6 guys instead of LeBron versus this. Last year it was LeBron versus Giannis. Kind of the year before that it was LeBron versus Giannis. This year it's LeBron versus Embiid. Kind of would like to have more than 2 people in the conversation.
Yeah, I feel that. So yeah, we'll go to Connor's next poll now.
Yeah, so obviously I mentioned this before that the Texans are being very sort of they're not budging they're saying that we're not going to trade Deshaun Watson. We're not trading Deshaun Watson. But honestly, I feel like they're going to have to at some point because I do think I agree. Zach has said this, and I agree with him that I think Deshaun Watson will sit out if he doesn't get traded. So I said, which team would benefit the most from a Deshaun Watson trade? So I basically picked the 3 teams that he said he wanted to go to. So the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Panthers. And I also put the Texans on here because, who knows, they could get some, they'll get a lot in return for him if they trade him. So who knows, it might benefit them in the long run too. But I said the Miami Dolphins. Zach, what about you?
All right, I picked the New York Jets. Eric, what about you?
I picked the Carolina Panthers. And how about you, Nate?
I picked the Panthers as well.
Oh, I was hoping he was going to say the Texans.
Yeah, that would have been really
all
funny.
different.
But yeah, so this poll got 20 votes. One thing that didn't get mentioned that I actually thought was kind of sad was that poll that Nate did with the J.J. Watt. That one got 61 votes, and it's pretty sad that turned out to be irrelevant because that was actually pretty good. But this got 20 votes. The Jets got 20%. The Dolphins got 35% in second. The Panthers won the poll at 40%. And the Texans got 5% at the bottom. So I said the Miami Dolphins just because for a couple reasons. I was pretty torn between the Dolphins and Panthers at this point. Mainly, this is kind of going back to what Zach said before about why he thinks the Panthers need to draft a quarterback. Because I do think Deshaun Watson, he could be the quarterback that could rule the NFC South, for the coming years if he goes to the Panthers. But I more so said for the Dolphins because I think the Dolphins are in a much better position to win right now. Whereas I think the Panthers, it would still probably take a couple of years to build them up. So maybe not he wouldn't have as much success if he went to the Panthers. But I feel like with the Dolphins, he could start winning right now and he could keep winning. He would have a bit of an obstacle in the Bills when it comes to the AFC East, but the Jets and the Patriots are down and out right now. So, it's still a fairly easy division. There's still 2 teams that would be pretty easy wins, in my opinion, on the schedule. In terms of, if he were to go to the Dolphins. The Dolphins have a great defense in place already, and he would definitely fill that missing piece on their offense right now. Because, this team, they managed to go 10-6 with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua splitting duties at quarterback, which you never see teams go 10-6 when there's 2 quarterbacks splitting time. That's usually a recipe for disaster. If you just take a look at how Washington has been the past couple of seasons, splitting their quarterbacks up the entire season. So if they manage to do that, splitting quarterbacks, when you bring in, a bona fide star like Deshaun Watson, the Dolphins are going to go places if he goes there. So like I said, definitely very close. And I think the Dolphins would definitely need to get more weapons around him. It'd be nice for him to have more receivers. Devontae Parker's not going to cut it. He's good, but you need more than just him. And also, a good and stable running game would help as well. But, again, they managed to do what they did last season with Fitz and Tua. So I say the Dolphins. I guess I will let Nate talk about why he said the Panthers would be the best fit.
Yeah, so this is kind of why I didn't vote the Panthers in the first round quarterback poll, just because I feel like this is a better, almost a better route for them to go is to go and try and get Deshaun Watson here. I think he'd come in and instantly give these guys a boost, and maybe not this year with, I think Brady and the Bucks are still going to be really dangerous, but if Brady just does move on next year and Breeze probably will be retired by that time, I think, Watson and McCaffrey and that Panthers roster could take over the NFC South again. So I think that would be a huge move. And I think for me, it really moves the needle more than the Jets and the Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins are in pretty decent shape too. But if Watson went to the Jets, it'd be an even worse situation he's in now in Cleveland. And the Dolphins, they could probably make the playoffs. But I think the Panthers give him a better shot to compete for titles in a quicker time period.
All right. Well, I will say the last thing about this poll is that this was an interesting poll to follow too. Another close one where this one actually, right from the start, the Dolphins were leading the charge for most of the way, but then a bit of a late surge happened for the Panthers. I don't know if some of our Clutch Crew sports fans, we have a lot of Panthers fans that watch this.
They probably did, honestly. They probably did.
Some of them went on.
Wouldn't
Aaron and
surprise me.
Jackson, and some of them
Yeah.
went on there and voted for the Panthers. So there's a bit of a late surge for the Panthers on that one, but I'll let Nate talk about his final poll.
Yeah, so my last poll here, I asked who finishes the season as a starting quarterback of the Saints in 2021, which basically I was asking, you know, the Saints have a kind of interesting quarterback situation. We still don't know if Drew Brees is going to retire or not. They got a couple, pretty capable backups in Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, both not franchise quarterbacks necessarily, but definitely interesting guys to watch. And then they've been linked to a bunch of free agents and potentially Russell Wilson if he does come available in the trade. So really what's kind of asking is not so much like who's going to be their opening day starter, because with some of these guys that they could get the starting job and then either get not be the guy and they got to switch someone out. But what I'm really asking is like, who do you think out of this bunch, or you could even say another response, but who do you think is the Saints quarterback of the future? So my vote was for Jameis Winston, but I will hand it over to Zach here and go around and see what you guys think.
Okay. With much pain and much, not knowing at all what it will be, I said Taysom Hill. Eric, how about you?
I said Jameis Winston.
And I said Jameis Winston.
All right, yeah, and that Twitter would agree. They said Winston won the poll with 50% of the vote. The rest of the vote was split between Drew Brees and Taysom Hill, and I think people don't really understand why Wilson was thrown in there. I guess because he got no votes. But so most people think that Winston will be the starter, and I would agree with that. He seems like the most logical choice. He has real NFL experience, and it wasn't great. Obviously, his numbers and the wins didn't really add up down in Tampa, but I think with a coach like Sean Payton and those weapons, he could definitely be a serviceable quarterback at least next year, and maybe they might see something in him. And he's still a relatively young guy. They could still turn his career around, but I still think that Brees will end up retiring. I'd be surprised if he does hang on. I'd be surprised if he. That's kind of why I said who finishes the season too, because even if he does try and suit up next year, I don't see him making it more than halfway through the season. Just the way he, he looks his age now. He's getting the arm strength and all that's being affected. So I think one of those backups definitely takes over next year. I think Winston's the better bet. I mean, everyone thinks that Hill's a young guy, but he's I think 30 now, because he stayed in college so long. So he barely has any experience, and he's that age already. So I just think that as of right now, I think Winston is the guy, but I wouldn't rule out at all if they could trade for Russell Wilson. That would be huge, and I think obviously he'd come in and be the starter. I think that would be the best option for them. But definitely a interesting situation down there to keep an eye on the rest of this offseason.
Yeah, and then since I was the only one different, I'll quickly say before we go to NBA talk, I'll say why I picked Hill. One, for Russell Wilson, I agree, that'd be the best. I just don't think it's possible salary-wise, to make that work. And then Drew Brees, I do think ends up retiring. And even if he does return, I don't think he would return with the Saints. And the reason why I picked Hill over Winston is Hill is actually under contract for them next season, whereas Winston's a free agent, and they've been kind of, with the quotes that they've put out about Winston, oh, he's a great quarterback. We really like Winston, but they haven't made any efforts to re-sign him or anything, whereas Hill is guaranteed. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but he's under contract, so he's not going anywhere unless they cut him. So for that reason, I think Winston is a free agent. He could end up going anywhere, whereas Hill, I think, is guaranteed to be in New Orleans and gives him a better chance to be the starter at the end of the year. So that was my reason for picking Hill, but it's so tough to know what New Orleans is going to do. That's going to be an interesting offseason for Saints fans. So next, guys, we will end the show going around the hoop. So the All-Star game is next week. woohoo, I guess. I don't think anybody expected them to have an All-Star game this season because of COVID.
Woo!
But
200 points
yeah, I
going
know.
on for each team, like no defense. Woo!
And so we have an All-Star game next Sunday, and they've already announced the rosters, who's going to be in the game. I guess later this week they will pick the teams. LeBron and KD will be drafting the team, so that's always fun to watch. I think that was a really good idea when they decided to change it up and have the players draft their teams. It makes it real interesting to see the dynamics instead of just being East versus West. So with every All-Star comes snubs. If you go on Twitter, and you'll find every fan of every team saying their guy should be in the All-Star game, and he was snubbed. And I do agree that usually that's the case.
Biombo was snubbed.
I do agree. Usually that is the case, more so in the NFL with the Pro Bowl. I think snubs are a lot more real in the NFL, but I think they get it right 95% of the time with these NBA All-Star lineups. So each of us are going to talk about one snub that we saw from the All-Star lineups, and we're going to also include a snub can be considered a reserve who should be a starter, or a person who's not in the game at all should be a reserve, or one of the guys who came in because of injury should have made it without injury. Like if Devin Booker should have been in originally instead of somebody else. But so that's all the criteria for what a snub is. And also too, you're gonna have to say, you can't just say somebody should be a starter. You have to if you add somebody, you have to take someone out. You got to balance your equations here. So my snub, obviously, that I picked, a lot of people could probably see where this is going, but I said Damian Lillard should have been a starter instead of Luka Doncic. Now, this was a very, very close contest. It was basically a tie. For some reason, the fans get a lot more say into this, and I think they should. But the media and the players, or the coaches and the players, and I think the media also has some votes too. But they voted for, basically everybody voted for Dame to be a starter over Luka. But the fan vote for Luka was so overwhelmingly for him instead of Dame. That was what caused Luka to be the starter. And I'm placing this blame on Europe. I think the European countries are all behind Luka, and that's how he got in.
It's all Europe's fault.
I'm blaming.
Way to go, Europe.
But okay, so seriously though, I do think this is a snub. I mean, Dame is in the MVP conversation. Whenever you have a guy in the MVP conversation, they should no doubt be a starter. And Luka's not in the MVP discussion. Their stats are, I will say, comparable. Luka's, the triple doubles that Eric
Triple double.
That's two triple double references. But
he had the triple double, Zach. He's the best player in the NBA, just like Karl Anthony Towns shooting 3-pointers. He should have been an All-Star.
How many triple doubles does Dame have this year, Zach?
So obviously he wins in that department, but efficiency-wise, Dame is so much more efficient, so much better three-point shooter, free throw shooter, clutch shots too. I mean, he has this season already 2 game-winning shots, which is crazy to think about. So the fact that he's so much more clutch than Luka, so much more efficient. Also, he's been doing it without CJ and Nurkic for most of the season. Those guys have been hurt. And the fact that his team is right now 6th in the Western Conference playoffs, and the Mavericks are not in the playoffs. For all of those reasons are why Dame, I think, should have been a starter. And I think all the coaches and players and stuff would agree with me there. Like, Dame should have been a starter over Luka, but Europe made that not happen. Eric, tell us about
this is gonna be trending on Twitter. # Europe's fault.
Yeah. Eric,
man.
tell us about who you think was snubbed as well.
Yeah, anybody that knows me, this would probably shock them in a way, but I'm going to go on the same avenue as Zach here and say a reserve that should have been a starter. But I'm going to say that James Harden should be a starter over Kyrie. Ironically enough, they're both on the same team, which makes it even more interesting. But the reason why I'm picking James Harden over Kyrie is pretty simple. I mean, when I found out that Kyrie was a starter, that was the biggest shock to me out of this whole thing. Like, regardless of who got snubbed or who's starting and not starting or whatever, like, when I saw that Kyrie was starting, that just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, he's been good this year when he has played, but he had just such a long stretch of games where he didn't play. And, you know, when you miss like a game or two, obviously that's fine. Like, I don't mind when players do like rest days here and there, as long as it's sparingly. I don't like when they do it all the time, but when it's every now and then, I'm okay with that and I'm understanding. Or if it had been like an injury or something, then that could be different. But he missed a lot of games for personal reasons, and I don't know what was going on with him, but when you miss that many games, I just don't really see how you can be worthy of being a starter. Whereas James Harden has played in, I want to say he's played every game since he's been in net, or if not, he's been in most of them. And plus, he's been kind of carrying the team with KD out. I feel like he's been more influential on their wins than Kyrie has. So I think James Harden is the better player than Kyrie right now. I feel like, he's played in more games. He's really helping the team right now. So I just don't really see how Kyrie gets it. So I feel like that was a pretty simple one, but so I will hand it over to, unless anybody else has anything to add on to that, I'll hand it over to Connor for his snub.
Well, obviously, I have to talk about the biggest snub in the history of the NBA All-Star Game, that Karl-Anthony Towns did not make it because he can shoot the three-pointer, so he should be in.
BS. Such BS,
boo.
dude. Come on, NBA. Come on.
Karl-Anthony Towns is the best player. But yeah, so aside from the fact that the Timberwolves are like the worst team in the NBA, but yeah,
he's barely played.
Yeah, right. So I'm actually going to go a different avenue. So Zach and Eric both did reserves that should have been starters. I'm actually going to go someone who didn't make the All-Star game altogether that should have. And I'm going to talk about and say that DeMar DeRozan should have made the All-Star game over Zion. And the biggest thing for me when it comes to Zion and DeRozan, so especially if you look at the expectations that were on these teams this year, if you look at the expectations, the Pelicans were supposed to come out this year and they were supposed to be, they're supposed to maybe not win the Southwest, because a lot of people thought that the Mavericks were going to win the Southwest. But, the Pelicans were supposed to be kind of right behind the Mavericks, kind of on their tail, at least making the playoffs for sure. They were going to finally develop. They brought Brandon Ingram back. Zion was going to continue to develop, and the Pelicans were going to be a force this year. Well, so far that hasn't happened. The Pelicans are currently sitting near the bottom of the Western Conference. Not even in the playoff discussion right now. They're they're like 4.5 games out right now, losing record. And that's where they're sitting. On the other hand, you had the San Antonio Spurs, who a lot of people probably thought were going to finish last in the Southwest this year. Last or second to last. The Spurs, their playoff run was going to finally come to an end. This was going to be the year that they finally missed. Well, okay, now the Spurs are over here on top of the Southwest, ahead of the Mavericks, ahead of the Pelicans. They are on top of the world right now in the Western, at least in their division. Obviously, they're not on top of the Western Conference. They're getting beat out by the Jazz, Lakers, Clippers, and Suns. But the Spurs are still way performing out expectations this season. And a lot of that is contributed to DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan has been playing. He's been playing fairly well. And, he hasn't put up the largest stats in the world, but he's averaging something like 20 points a game, somewhere around like 7 assists, 5 rebounds. It's decent stats. And we talk about this all the time on the podcast that stats are not everything. Even though those stats may look pretty regular to some people, for a team like the Spurs, again, this was supposed to be a rebuilding year for the Spurs. And here they are, winning record in the playoffs on top of their division. So, whereas the Pelicans, not so much. And I think, especially for Zion, once again, his stats are really, at least his offensive stats, are really what's blowing him out of proportion. I think that's a lot of, a big problem when it comes to the NBA, at least for the fans and even some of the analysts and media too, that like they blow offensive stats way out of proportion, that they fail to look at defensive stats. I mean, it's what, has been going on with like James Harden and Russell Westbrook and all of those guys their whole careers. Like, they put up these major offensive stats and then they're like some of the worst defenders in the league. I mean, Steph Curry is another good example of that, and Trae Young is another good example. So, whereas like Zion, again, he's out here, he's probably averaging somewhere around like 25 points a game, and he's this unstoppable force, and he's shooting like 60%, but you're also forgetting that he's getting scored on like no tomorrow. The Pelicans have one of the worst defenses in the league, and it's like, and he's a big part of that. So, he's not grabbing the rebounds like he should. He's not, helping out and doing stuff on defense that he should. But he's averaging 25 points a game and he's shooting 60%. So Zion Williamson, all-star. And really it just goes back to the whole point of, I mean, really what Zach was talking about too with Luka, that the NBA All-Star game is just a popularity contest. I mean, it seems like every year there are these players that like, they really just don't get in because they're not as popular as some of these other people. Like, Paul George is one of these players that's always going to make it because he's so popular and everyone knows who he is. I mean, and the same argument can be made for Zion this season. Like, Zion, he was the number one pick a couple seasons ago. He's, this dominant force. He's a fan favorite, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of, and, I'm sure there's a lot of non-basketball fans too, that even if you ask them like, do you know who Zion Williamson is? They'll be like, oh yeah, I know who he is. Especially in North Carolina, where I'm from, like pretty well everyone knows who Zion Williamson is in North Carolina. But pretty well, if you go to any average fan and ask them like, you've heard about DeMar DeRozan? They go, who? DeMar DeRozan? What? Who does he play for? So it's a popularity contest, honestly. I mean, I could honestly probably make an argument for a couple guys on this list that probably should have gotten in. I probably could have made an argument that Bam Adebayo should have gotten in over somebody. Probably could have made an argument for Tobias Harris too. But really, I think DeMar DeRozan was the most obvious one for me, getting written, knocking Zion out.
Yeah, definitely. I can. The Pelicans defense has been trash. I know that for sure. And they always say they're always like, just add some more reserve spots. But the fun is always the snubs, and if you add more spots, you get less snubs. So the fact that you have there's some. I mean, this all snub team would be really good if they were their own team.
Oh, but, yeah, for sure. You get like a starting lineup of like, you take like Russ, Fred VanVleet, DeRozan, Tobias, and then Bam, like those 5 guys in the starting lineup. Like,
yeah, really. That's gonna wrap this one up, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you saw our polls on Twitter. We might do this again in the future. So thanks to everybody who participated in those polls. And next week we are going to be coming back with, I think, number 8.
Sports Jeopardy
number 8. So
can anyone take down the king?
We shall see.
We'll
see. I'll be hosting that, and that'll be a lot of fun. And until then, guys, remember, be clutch.
Bye.
See ya.
Peace.